Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this next session of Geometry, Cosmology, Spirituality. This is actually the time of the new moon now, 9 o'clock this morning. So let's begin on this morning's session. Now, I'm going to do a bit more similar to what I did a couple of weeks ago. I haven't put that session online yet. I'm going to put the last one and this one now online shortly in the next day or so. Right, let's get moving. Spring feels as if it's coming our way. In fact, the next session that I do after this will actually take place during a course that I'm running here in Wales about the design of the cathedral. So that'll be this one part of the course that will be online, as it were. And more about that at the end. Right, let's begin. Now, last time I talked about polygon stars and the way in which they generate. Now I'm going to show that sort of in slide form this time, and then we're going to draw a really beautiful sort of rose type pattern that shows the development of polygon stars in a sort of inverse way, in a, almost like an opposite way to what I was showing 2 weeks ago. So let's begin from the one. Now, if you look at your screen, you'll see this dot. Now, this dot symbolizes the one, the origin. But the fact that you can see it, the fact you can see the dot means it's only a visual representation of the one, because the one is actually beyond our vision in terms of it doesn't have material form. So geometry begins from this very mysterious point. If we were to actually look at this dot in front of us, if we look at it very closely, it has a center and a circumference. Just a very small circumference. So where is the center? We can keep on looking further and further in when we're looking for the center of something. And we eventually have to realize that we can't actually see the dot. We can't see the point because we keep on looking further and further in, and it's a non-material, unmanifest point. So let's go to two-ness. If we started off with the one, let's now begin with two. So with two, we can draw a line. Now, a line is even more mysterious because if you think of a point as being dimensionless, if that point flows in one direction, then it's essentially an invisible point flowing in one direction. You end up with a line that technically is actually invisible. So the line that we have here, it represents the true line, but the true line only has length. It doesn't have width or height. So it's one dimensional. It's the first dimension. So in that sense, we still actually don't have something that we can see. All I can do is represent it with some drawn forms, with a dot and with a line. But let's now move into the second dimension, the two-dimensional plane. Now, by moving this radius around, we end up getting a two-dimensional circle. Now, the interesting thing about that radius was that it expressed to us this duality of that which is fixed and unmoving and that which is in a state of perpetual movement and change. The central dot that we started off with remained in its point, it remained rooted in its position, whereas the other point is the one that moved around and created that two-dimensional plane. So with that interaction between the changeable and the unchanging, we get this first embodied form, which is the circle. Now, in these circles, I'm going to draw the first two polygons that we get. So the triangle is, of course, threeness. We've had one, we've had two, and now we have 3 and 4. Now, all you can get with 3 and 4 is a polygon, and that's it. So there's threeness with the triangle, fourness with the square. Now, if you continue the lines, for instance, in the triangle on the left, if you continue those lines of the triangle out, they'll never meet again. So this is the one single thing that you can get when you divide a circle into 3. You just get a threefold polygon. Now, if you do the equivalent thing with the square, then a similar thing happens. The lines move off, never meeting again. So this is all you can get with 3 and 4. You just get polygons. So this is the first couple, you could say, where there is embodiment. The first odd number and even number where you have embodiment. 1 and 2, you don't have any embodiment. You just have the principle of 1 and that flowing of 1 into 2-ness. Right now, the 5-fold polygon and the 6-fold polygon. Now, the 5-fold polygon, as we saw last time, if you extend the edges of it, it eventually makes a polygon star. And this is the first time we get a polygon star with the number 5. Now, that's the limits when we reach there. If you continue the lines, they'll go off and they'll never meet again. Now, let's look at the hexagon on the right. That also extends into a polygon star, but again, then it reaches its limits and then the lines go off, not meeting again. Now, you remember from last time, this pattern is developing as we go along now, in the sense of there being one polygon for triangle and square, whereas for 5 and 6, we have one polygon and one polygon star for each of them. Now, 7 and 8 actually has 2 stars. So there's one star on the left and a second star, and then it reaches its limits. Now, a similar thing happens with 8 in the sense of there being a smaller star and then another star beyond that, and then it reaches its limits. So 2 stars, 1 polygon with 7 and 8. Now, as you can see, the pattern is developing here, so you know what's going to happen next when I do 9 and 10. 9 has 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, and likewise with 10. 1 star, 2 stars, and 3 stars. So you can see the pattern there. You can see how it develops. With 1 and 2, you have no body, no thing, as it were, no material thing that you can see. Once you get to 3 and 4, you get just one polygon. And then from there onwards, you have one polygon and, well, an increasing number of polygon stars, one more each time. So you can always know how many stars there can be with any number if you follow this particular guide. And so it goes on. Right, let's draw a beautiful pattern. I shall de-share my screen. Right. Okay, welcome everyone. I shall get my drawing camera ready. Right, okay, let's begin with the compasses set at a 4-inch radius. Now I'm working on A3 paper. So 4 inches. And go into the center of the page. Now, what we're going to do first is divide a circle into 12 and then draw one single 12-pointed star, which contains all of the others. And then we're going to do another pattern, which sort of inverts the order of all the polygon stars. So let's just draw this 12-pointed star first, like so. Right, having put in that circle, I'm going to put in a vertical line inside the circle. Now the next thing is to put in a crescent moon, like so. And then I'm going to go into the bottom of the circle and do the equivalent thing. So two semicircles. Now you will need these to be complete semicircles, and you'll see why shortly. You might need to make them a bit longer if you haven't quite drawn them as semicircles. When we get to that, you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to now use these two intersections. So you see the one that point of the compass is going in. I'm going to use this one as well. Those of you who are familiar with geometry will be very familiar with what I'm doing here. Moving towards getting a bisector cross. So one on this side, and then I'm going to use these 2 points to get an equivalent cross on this side as well. This is so that I can find the middle path between these two crosses. Now the middle path, I'm going to be talking about that a lot in the next session, which is during the course. I'll be talking about it in relation to the symbolic idea of eternal spring, but more about that in a couple of weeks' time. So just as a recap, to get these two crosses here, I put the point of my compasses here and here to make these two marks, and likewise the point of the compasses here and here to make these two marks. Now my ruler isn't long enough to go all the way through from this cross to this cross, so I'm going to go from the center through that cross there, and then from the cross through to the center here. Now these two new points that I've established on the circumference are what I'm going to use next with the same radial measurement. So this is the same radial measurement that we drew the circle with, as you can see. And we'll put in another semicircle. Now this is what I was meaning about if you find that this semicircle that you're drawing here doesn't quite meet up with the first two semicircles so that you get a tip of a petal, then you can extend that. I mean, having said that, we're not actually going to be using those. We're just using these 12 points around here. But it's sort of good practice to get into the habit of completing those petals. So we get a really clear image of the star. I'm going to actually get us to put pinprick holes through these 12 points here. So these 12 positions on the circumference where we have lines going through, that gives us a 12-fold division of the circle. Now, obviously, we want those pinprick holes to be visible on this side. We want to have those 12. Now, you probably can't see them on mine, so I'm going to just put little marks around them. You don't need to do this. You don't need to put little marks around the 12, but I'm going to put them around just so that you can sort of see how I'm interacting with them. But if you can see your pinprick holes, that's all you need. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, the rule of drawing this particular 12-pointed star is if this is your beginning point, you don't count your beginning point. You move on to the next one with your counting. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's where you're going to draw from and to. So your starting point, which you didn't count, from your starting point to where you counted the fifth point. So again, so starting point, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now keep on following that principle. So now this is my new starting point. So I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One, two, three, four, 5. One, two, three, four, 5. And you'll end up back where you started. Now, the reason why I've drawn this star is because it's the final polygon star that you get with 12. And so it encompasses or incorporates all of the other stars within it. And this is always obviously what happens with the final star. It's the star that is quite stellated, usually, in the sense of it having quite long stellated points. Now, within this follows that rule that I was showing in the slides. With a 12-pointed star, you have, or with 12, you could say the 12-fold division of the circle. You have the one polygon at the center, so the dodecagon, and then you have one star that's made up of two hexagons. So there's hexagon and another hexagon. The next star out is made up of squares, so you can see the right angle as a square, for instance. So there's 3 squares in that next layer. And the next one after that is made up of triangles. Now there's an equilateral triangle, one of 4 equilateral triangles. And then finally, you have this all-encompassing star that encompasses all of those other stars. It contains all of them. The one dodecagon, the 2 hexagons, the 3 squares, the 4 triangles, and then there's a return, you could say, to the one, but an all-encompassing one, having begun from this one single form at the center. Right, so that order of polygon at the center, and then going out to 2 hexagons, 3 squares, 4 triangles, and then finally this stellated star on the outside, that's what is going to be inverted with the next thing that we're going to draw. So that's why we've drawn this one first, so we can sort of get an idea of that emanation outwards of those particular shapes. Now get another piece of paper, or you can turn this one over if you want. Oh, actually, no, of course, you can't turn this one over because we've drawn on both sides. But yeah, so get a fresh piece of paper. Right, this time we're going to reduce to 2 inches. So again, get the midpoint of your page. You may feel there's a certain pace in my working here, and that's because I have to, I'm carrying the cross in the cathedral this morning, so I've got to get there on time. So I've got to make sure that I've got this session done before I go. Right, okay, so place the point of the compasses into that dot and draw a circle. This obviously is going to be a smaller circle compared to what we did previously. Right, so to a very familiar division of the circle, we're going to divide the circle into 6, but then we're going to move on to 12. Now, what I'm going to do is complete circles. This is why we've reduced the size of the circle. So let's do a complete circle like that. And I mean, if you're familiar with this is really one of the most familiar. I mean, it's really I suppose, the primary division of the circle. It just happens very naturally with a pair of compasses. Each new circle that you draw will give you the next position to draw from. And we go around exactly 6 times. Now to double up, I'm going to put my ruler like this between these 2 intersections that are further out. Now all we need is a tiny, tiny little line, just one little mark here, like that. That's enough. And what that essentially gives us is the starting point to do another 6 around 1. But obviously, because it's halfway between these 2 petals, then obviously it's going to be the same 6-fold diagram, but turned 1/12 around. So that's how we end up getting these 12 circles. So I'm going to begin from this point here and do the same thing. Now you'll need to concentrate a bit harder because in terms of knowing where to go. So for instance, when you look here, we don't go to where the petal tip is, we go to where this single line is, where this single curve crosses the central circle. And I'm going to keep on following that principle. So this will be the next one. Go past that petal tip, go to this single line here. I mean, we are just drawing 6 around 1 again, like we did about a minute ago, but because we obviously have a lot more to negotiate visually, once you sort of get the hang of what's going on, it's relatively straightforward. When you get to the final one, you do actually draw from a petal tip. So this petal tip here, that is where, so you can see that's going to give me this one here. Now, I should say, actually, to anyone here who is a mother, Happy Mother's Day, if you haven't been wished that already. There's already presents that have gone around in this house. This session, and in fact, the next session, are both really about the mother, because the next session is happening on the Feast of the Annunciation, which is the next full moon, rather wonderfully. It's the Monday of Holy Week. Oh, I've got the cat trying to climb over. I just have to get the cat around so it doesn't knock everything off. Oh, okay. Hazards of working from home. She usually comes and sits right in the middle of my drawing. Like she knows where the attention is and she wants to be at the focus of the attention. Right, now we could just stay with this. I mean, how beautiful is that? Just so simple. You can do this with any division of the circle. And what we're about to do next adds to it. We're going to add some straight lines to it. And this is where you'll see these stars that we were looking at with when we drew this, this inversion of the same forms. I'll describe that as we do it. Right, I'm going to get a HB pencil, and I'm going to begin by, well, first of all, begin by putting my glasses back on, and then I'm going to draw lines like this. So can you see how I've gone through these very skinny petals here? There's, one here going to the center and then an opposite one there. I've drawn a line through the middle of those two petals, and I'm going to do the same with all of the others. Well, I'll give you two different descriptions of how to draw the next bit. You can either draw it in a particular star order, which I'll describe to you shortly, or you can just follow the basic principle, which is that you need to make, so you see how here you have, you could say the bottom half of a diamond. So you now need to put the top half of the diamond in by drawing lines like from here to here and from here to here, and that would follow all the way around. Now, I'm going to draw them in the order of how you draw a stellated star, like this one. So you'll see what I mean. I'm going to actually go from there down to there. I'm not going to draw a full line, but you'll get a sense of what's going on as I start doing it. So I'm going to put my ruler here through there, and then you'll see that it naturally goes through like this. There, so I've drawn that. And I'm going to take this meandering route. I'm following the actual order of drawing that star. Now, like I say, you can just do all of your points like that. Just do one by one as you go around if you want. That's another way of doing it. And I don't need to sort of point out too readily how we have just drawn, well, the outline of this stellated star here, because that's, of course, that's the order that we were following. But the thing to point out is that this stellated star, as you can see, is at the center in this particular version that we're doing here, whereas with this one, it was the most outer star. Now that perhaps gives you a clue as to what's about to happen, because what we're going to do next, each one of these sort of areas that has four corners, we're going to draw quadrilateral shapes in. I'll say quadrilaterals because in some of them, that like this one here, for instance, there's going to be a square. And there'll either be a square or a diamond. So the next one that we're going to do, I'm going to begin from here and I'm going to go to there where it needs to go. And you'll find that it goes through an equivalent point here. And you can draw, well, you'll see what you draw, but you'll find it familiar because we just drew it a second ago. So what you'll find is that you get 3 points where it's essentially the corners of an equilateral triangle. But that's only given us 3 of our 12 areas. So let's put in some more. Now that's essentially the points of a Star of David, you could say. 6-pointed star made up of 3 triangles, 2 triangles rather. So there's one triangle and the second triangle. In go the other 2 to make it 12. Because if a triangle is 3, then 4 times 3 is 12. 4 triangles. Right, so I'm now going to put in, these are going to be squares, and I'll draw it in a similar way. So it will resemble the star that's made up of 3 squares. So here are the corners of a large square, if we think of that as being a square. And then the final square. I mean, like I said before, you can just draw each one of these squares sort of individually as you go around, if you like. That's another way of doing it. I'm just sort of doing them as if they're sort of polygon stars, just to emphasize that particular aspect of what's going on. But perhaps the thing that I should emphasize the most is that isn't this beautiful? This is just such a wonderful pattern. It's really the primary reason to draw geometric patterns is to remind yourself of beauty. And of course, beauty is a divine attribute. So beauty in that sense. where would we be without beauty? Now I'm going to do hexagonal, well, corners of the hexagonal star. Another really beautiful aspect of this pattern and these patterns generally, when you put all those circles around the periphery of one central circle, you can see how we've begun with this very sort of slim diamond, and then the diamond has become less slim when we get to here. It's as if it's sort of opening out. And then finally, when you get to here, it opens out completely into a square. But then it starts squashing in the other direction. So this diamond here is actually the same as this one here, but turned sideways. And so you can see there's a natural symmetry going to happen here because we've started off with the slim ones, gone to these ones, and then gone to the squares, then moved back to these ones, but turned the other way. So what we're going to end up with are more of these slim diamonds turned sideways. Now, to get that, we need to get this final corner here, as it were, which we don't have marked. So I'm going to show how we can get them by putting a ruler through here. So you see going through these slim diamonds, through these points, I can make a little mark at the top and a little mark at the bottom. And these are the ones I'm about to use. So I'm going to put the equivalent ones all the way through. So that's it. I have my 12 points marked. Now, before I finish, I'm just going to run through this again. So we started off with the stellated star in the middle there. So rather than it being on the outside as it is in this diagram, it's in the middle of this one. Then we moved out to um, the triangular stars, which is the next one in on this diagram. So we're moving inwards, got the triangular stars of the next one in. Then the next one outwards is the square, and that's the squares as we're going again into the center. And as we move in, we get the two hexagons right near the center, which are out on the outside of here. And then finally, at the center, we've got the single dodecagon, that one polygon that you always begin with these shapes. And that's what we can get with these final points. We don't actually need to draw any diamonds rather beautifully. We just need to draw straight lines between these points that we've done. And by doing that, that gives us, well, let's put a second one in and you'll see how it happens. So you just naturally get diamonds appearing like this just by drawing a 12-fold polygon like this, drawing from point to point. So it's a really nice, simple and satisfying ending to the diagram. And as you may imagine, this makes a rather wonderful colouring project as well. Now you can divide the circle up into any number of divisions, and then from each one of those divisions, draw the same circle that you've just divided up, the same size of circle, as it were. And you'll end up with a pattern, a variation of this type of pattern. They begin from, a much simpler basis when you're down in the lower numbers. But once you get to 10 and 12, you start to get these wonderful rose patterns, and they just become more and more complex as you go along. Right, I have got to hot foot it out, so I'm going to just put this back on again. Now, this course in Wales is going to begin in a couple of weeks' time, running from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. There's going to be lots of drawing, walking around the cathedral, walking labyrinths, walking the Venus pentagram. And so if you're free to come on the course, do please get in touch. You can probably just come for a part of it if you want, because it's quite a few days, and various people have said that they could only make part of it. So you can feel free to come on part of it as well if you want to do that. Now, I had better head off to the cathedral where I'm going to be walking through that golden ratio doorway of the sacristy to go and get my alb on so I can carry the cross. So I'll go and see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for coming.